Well, hello YouTube. This is Just Another Guy talking about stuff. Here with Mrs. Just Another Guy talking about stuff.
Hello.
For a special series of videos, we're beginning doing a book study on The Anxious Generation, written by, I believe his name is Jonathan Haidt. I believe that's how you pronounce that. We're not exactly sure. Let us know in the comments. So let's first off talk about why we're doing this book study.
Well, we're doing this book study because they're actually. I'm a teacher. I teach high school. I've been teaching since 2001. Teaching high school in New York since 2001, and at my job, they are doing this book study. They are considering the possibility of banning cell phones completely in school. This is the first step to that. I am unable to participate in the book study, but wanted to read the book regardless. And this is a way to hold myself accountable. Vinny and I are going to read a chapter a week and do a reaction video to each chapter, and that's why we're doing it.
That's why we're doing it.
That's why we're doing it.
So this week we read just the introduction, just to get our feet wet a little bit and talk about the introduction, talk about the book, what the book is going to talk about, and and basically the gist of what's going on here. Basically, the author just laid out the fundamental points of what they're going to talk. It's an introduction, right? They're going to tell you, they've laid out the fundamental points about what they're going to talk about, why they're going to talk about it, how they think it's relevant. I think what a good introduction does is get the brain to think about the questions that the author is going to answer later in the book, and I think that's basically what the setup of the book was, of the introduction was.
Yeah, and he also refers to Gen Z as the anxious generation. And even though he said that the end of Gen Z is the Gen Alpha, he doesn't agree that the Gen Z, the anxious generation, he doesn't agree that the cutoff has happened.
Right, he kind of blends in Gen Z with Gen Alpha, which I believe Gen Alpha is defined as people born around after 2010. But it all kind of blends in, because when you think about generations, right, are kind of defined by events and technology that shape their lives.
Yeah, he said it was more technology now rather than the events. How long have you been working with kids?
I've been an athletic trainer in the secondary schools since 2003, so this is my 21st year as a sports medicine professional. So I too do work with secondary school athletes, adolescents. Which I think there's a lot of crossover with what the book's going to talk about. But at the same time, I think because actually in the introduction they talk about how students and children who participate in things like sporting events and church groups, things where you're forced to be face to face with people, are actually showing signs of less anxiety. I'm sure they'll explore that more as we get into the chapters.
I mean, just speaking anecdotally,
yes.
Have you seen a rise in anxiety in athletes that you work with?
I think it's hard for me to tell. I think there's a level of anxiety in students in general. I guess working with athletes, it's hard to tell, because athletes are going to be in a high stress situation regardless of the setting. So it is kind of hard for me to tell in that aspect. But I guess you could argue that there is some sort of more, I don't know how to explain it, but need to be have an online presence in athletics, right? I played sports growing up, and if you got your name in the paper, that was a big deal. Right now, there's plenty of online sites that follow high school sports. That every school even has their own athletic website where they will talk about what the students are doing. And
each
stuff
sport
like
usually
that.
has a Twitter page.
Each sport will have social media sites. Sometimes I don't say each sport, but a lot of sports do.
We have one of our local papers does the vote, like the athlete of the week.
Yes.
And then I've also heard my students saying, "Hey, can you go vote for me?" So that's definitely a thing. I've seen a huge huge spike in anxiety since I started teaching in 2001. At first, I thought we've just got better at diagnosing anxiety, but definitely have seen a huge shift. You know, it's got to the point now where we have 504s that I can't call on kids in class. We have 504s, kids can't give verbal presentations, which, you know, are important soft skills that you need to be employable. So this is definitely a concern for teachers and for anyone. Should be a concern for parents, anyone who's got children. So that's why we read the book.
This is why we're reading the book.
Haven't read the whole thing.
Haven't read the whole thing. We got through the introduction. Like I said, you know, the introduction kind of lays out the fundamental why we're looking into this and what we're going to do about it in the future.
He delineates a big difference between reality-based and virtual-based interactions that kids have now. He talks about the increase in wanting to protect our kids from the real world, right? Like, you and I know, when we were kids, we'd just disappear off on our bikes and be gone for hours and hours. And now, even kids that go out on their bikes are so closely supervised because parents are concerned about the physical terrible things happening to kids, but they're opening the door for virtual terrible things.
Right. I think that was the main takeaway of what the book is going to be about, is how, you know, parents have overprotected kids in the real world and underprotected kids in the virtual world.
Yeah, definitely. Did you want to talk about the four main things that he believes that need to be done?
Well, yeah, this is what the book is going to lay out, right?
Yeah.
It's going to lay out the four, basically, no digital devices for children under 13. That was
till high school. Yeah, I think it definitely no cell phones. As far as the devices, you know, like having a tablet at home, that really wasn't touched upon. But he said no.
Or maybe the online portion of it.
Yeah, no cell phones until high school.
Social media. Until,
he said no social media until
16.
16. Completely banning cell phones in schools, just total ban. And then I forgot about the last one.
Well, that's why we have the book.
That's why we have the cheat sheet. So as far as banning cell phones in schools, there's a couple of big schools in our area who have gone to these Yonder pouches. Yonder is a brand. The kids come to school with their cell phone. They put it in a pouch. It's sealed up. They can't get to it, but they can have it on their person for the rest of the day. And then at the end of the day, the pouches get unsealed.
So the fourth thing was more unsupervised play and childhood independence. So that's what the book is going to talk about, apparently, and that's what we're going to get into and explore why, how, and why we think this should be addressed. And speaking to the anxiety portion of it, because obviously, you know, you're in education. I'm in athletics, like I said. There's always going to be a level of anxiousness and drive to perform in what I do. I would ask, what are some like examples of what you've seen that show children being more anxious, other than, you know, obviously they're going to their doctors more often, and I don't know if the doctors are just more willing to prescribe these modifications, like no calling on in class. I couldn't imagine getting a doctor's note in the 90s when I went to high school with a doctor saying, no, you can't give public speaking. I mean, I would admit,
talk about your experience.
I would have talked to my doctor about it. Believe it or not, like, you know, these YouTube videos are one thing, but when I get up in front of a crowd, I kind of tend to freeze up.
Well, what was your experience in college when you had to do public speaking in the morning?
I probably shouldn't admit this to anybody. But when I was in college, taking communications, which basically was a lot of public speaking. Yeah, I used to take a couple shots of vodka before I had to give a public speech presentation to just kind of loosen myself up and be able to get through it. And believe it or not, it actually worked. I don't recommend this as a strategy. I definitely wouldn't recommend it to high school students. But
well, no, because then they'll be thrown out of school.
Right. That's something I dealt with.
I mean,
before, you know, social media.
I can circle back to your question, but I know the older I get, the more anxious I get, and I know this isn't addressed in the book because this is to do with adolescents and children, but I wonder if my increased anxiety is my increased cell phone usage and social
Well, the author
media.
does to go into how this is affecting everybody, not just adolescents, but obviously it's going to be amplified in adolescents who've grown up with this technology their entire lives, whereas we have kind of adapted to it, whereas it's just always been a part of their lives.
Right. So what I see in the classroom, like I said, I see kids that are nervous to be called on. It is interesting in the book how it delineates the difference between students that are assigned male at birth and students who are assigned female at birth. I see with the classroom, and you and I have talked about the gender gap in achievement in school. I see the girls intrinsically wanting to do better, like really handing in high quality work that they've spent a lot of time stressing out about. And then what I tend to see with the boys is they just don't care. It's almost like, well, I can't achieve a high level, so I'm not going to. I'm not even going to try. It does tend to be more girls that I can't call on, but this is usually a 504, not an IEP. So what tends to happen, the doctor doesn't prescribe. The doctor says that this child has been diagnosed with these conditions, and then the 504 committee decides on what recommendations to put in place. So not being called on or not having to do the public speaking part is definitely what we're seeing.
So yeah, real quick, I guess we should probably define what a 504 versus an IEP is.
Right. So an IEP is an individualized education plan that is for a student who's been diagnosed, student with a disability. Whereas a 504 tends to be something for a health condition. So if a kid is diabetic, they might have a 504 that says they're allowed to have their cell phone in class because they've got their Dexcom on their cell phone and they're monitoring their sugar really closely. Or kid who has asthma, maybe they have to their 504 says that the classrooms that they're in has to have an air conditioner that's running to purify the air, filter the air. So a 504 tends to be, 504 isn't for a learning disability, or any type of disability. A 504 is usually for a health condition. That's the difference.
What are you looking forward to? What are you expecting to learn, and what are you looking forward to?
I don't know. I'm a little nervous, especially as a parent of a Gen Z kid who, full disclosure, does suffer from anxiety and other issues. I sort of read the introduction, and you feel, if I'd have read this book 20 years ago.
Well, I think that's what the book is addressing. Like,
right.
If we would have known the dangers of social media and what this would have done to children, would we have acted differently? And will we act differently in the future? Because we are up against a grindstone here versus what the kids now expect and what the kids are going to want. And, how can you wean the kids off of this technology that they've been accustomed to? Or is it more we have to start with the younger kids not giving them access to? I think that's a big question.
I mean, the sort of no social media till 16. I see my students at school are super sneaky. Their parents think that they don't have access to social media. They have access to social media. They tell their parents they just have a Facebook. They have a Facebook, an Instagram, a Tumblr. Excuse me. They have all the social media.
Right, and it's very easy to get around these things, especially now that cell phones are a part of everyone's life. Right, it's in your pocket the entire time. Whereas maybe, in the 2000s when social media was just coming to fruition, when it was exploding, it was more on computers and desktops and, on the family computer where you can get on your MySpaces and your early Facebook, as opposed to now having it just in your pocket.
I also think, early, and he does speak to this a little bit in the book, that early Facebook was very different from what Facebook currently is. Early Facebook was a way to check in with friends, maybe people that you don't usually check in with, and now it's just a wash of bots and algorithmically fed
and ads
and
targeted media and
So I think definitely something I'm going to be focusing on is the difference between the genders. Like I said, I've spoke about the I speak to you all the time about the difference in gender achievement gap, and I'm wondering how the cell phone usage and the internet usage is affecting that. He did say, girls it's anxiety, boys it's just sort of like almost like straight to, like we're seeing massive increase rates in amongst males. I know I can speak to, I think, at least 2 ex-students that I've lost to within this past year, and that seemingly on the outside had great lives, were doing great things, and then suddenly they're just gone. So I wouldn't so much say as I'm looking forward to this book, but definitely intrigued by this book. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right, and I wanted to leave on a quote in the book that is attributed to Marcus Aurelius that I thought was interesting. I think it's a good way to close out the introduction of the book. Like
I'm glad
I said,
you've got your glasses on and you can read it.
We'll be thanks, and we'll be exploring this this book in chapters. These videos will come out as we read the chapters. We expect to try to get at least one a week. I believe there's 5 parts. That's the plan.
And we have 5 weeks till we leave to the UK.
And we have 5 weeks to leave for the UK. So hopefully we'll have the book finished by Christmas. We'll have the series done by Christmas, and I hope you enjoy it. So if you like this content, if you want to follow along, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and do all the YouTube stuff to help the algorithm out. But like I said, I wanted to leave with this quote because I thought it was interesting. It's attributed to Marcus Aurelius in the 2nd century. Don't waste the rest of your time here worrying about other people unless it affects the common good. It will keep you from doing anything useful. You'll be too preoccupied with what so-and-so is doing and why, and what they're saying and what they're thinking and what they're up to, and all the other things that throw you off and keep you from focusing on your own mind. That's some advice from centuries ago that I think is attributable to today, especially in our age of social media and the internet.
So with that said, like and subscribe.
Of course. And until next time, witty sign-off catchphrase.
See ya.